Hey everybody, welcome back to our Amish interview series part 3. Hope you guys have enjoyed the last 2 videos. We're excited to get into this third part, so here we go.
Do accept the taxes still with their accept
They
card.
accept the handouts, yeah. And so with my friend telling me, explaining to me that's actually violation to the law, and I said, well, the Amish wouldn't do that. He said, oh yeah, they do. He said, you guys think that you're Christians just because you're Amish. And I said, yeah, I guess I realized that. That was our base.
Yeah.
And he said, that doesn't mean nothing. He said, the Amish tradition is not spiritual life, which, I was just learning. Because I was only saved like a couple weeks at that point. Yeah, but yeah, the thing that happens is they base so much on when we get born, when we get part of the church, when we get baptized, that's when we get our Social Security number. But they don't call it that. They call it an exemption number. They're very concerned what you call it. And so what they do is then you sign the papers, the bishop fills it out, you sign it, send it in, and that's how you get your number. And you're exempt from all those government handouts and stuff. But how many Amish take, food stamps and all those kind of things? And it's something they're not understanding. I don't know if they would intentionally do that, but I never got to explain what exemption number is about. The bishop just said, you sign your name here, I'll send it in, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because they look at that exemption number, they're very scared about it, that it's the mark of the beast. Yeah, they think that's part of that, and they don't want to be able the government to track them. That's a big concern. And there was actually this man that I knew, he was quite old, but he said he'd never had exemption number or nothing.
Really?
And he had a banking account. He was actually a pretty rich man.
Wow.
I don't know how he did that, and I don't understand that because we had to use that to open a banking account,
Right.
checking account, and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Did you have the Social Security card and your birth certificate?
I had my birth certificate. I had a Social Security number, like the exemption number, like John was explaining, but I did not have a Social Security card.
Okay.
So yeah, just like he said, about 17 or 18 when I joined the church, I filled out a paper. The bishop signed his name. I signed my name, and it was filed for an exemption number. So that's what I had, and it's the same Social Security number I got today. But I did know of 2 individual Amish people that did not have Social Security numbers. And the one in particular, he was literally scared to death that would be the mark of the beast. And he totally dodged having it. The other one, I don't know exactly why he didn't have. I just know that he never bothered filing taxes. He got away with it somehow. I don't know how. Maybe it's different today.
Yeah.
Back then, I know that's the way he operated.
Interesting.
Can I add just a little thing in there?
Yeah.
When I went to get my driver's license, I had my exemption number,
Okay.
and I didn't know anything different. Thought this is I'm just going to
That's just
show
the
it to
norm.
them. And when I went up to them and showed them my number, and she's like, "That's your Social Security." I said, "It's my exemption number," and she said, "No way." She said, "That's not an exemption number." She said, "That's your Social Security number." I'm like, "Wow!" All these years I never used it because I thought it's my exemption. Yeah, so that was a clarification there too. Like, it's your Social Security number.
Interesting. So they just call it by something else to
We
appease
just
the Amish.
use it as an exemption because we sign a paper.
But it means nothing because they
It
get
means
taxes on it and pay. Interesting.
We had somebody actually submit a question, and they asked, do the Amish believe in a flat earth versus a round earth, which we thought was kind of funny, but Fannie didn't really know.
I didn't really know.
So we thought we'd give you guys the opportunity to answer that.
So whoever
I
wants
guess
to
for me, we had a globe when I was going to school, so I always thought the world was round, but I didn't give it a lot of thought neither. It's just a little bit that I was taught in school that I believed that. So I never really tried to prove it, whether it was round or flat, or I didn't give it a lot of thought because I didn't know a lot about the Bible. I didn't know a lot about creation, and so it was not a topic that I was really all that interested in.
I actually knew that the Earth was round, but I didn't realize it sits on an axis. But when I was homeschooling, I actually learned that. I was teaching my children, and we had Bible for science and some different stuff. We actually was simply Bible, and so we came to this, and it was explaining on the earth, and it was sitting how it's telling us how it sits on an axis. And I was impressed. Like I knew it's round, but I was impressed how it all was. So that was really. But I never heard of an Amish person thinking it may be flat. But I think most of us know it's round, but we don't understand it because nobody really goes into detail about it.
Are the Amish romanticized in novels, movies, entertainment in that way?
You know, from the outside, it looks cool. It looks like, man, how if I could just be Amish. You know, I hear people say that, but it's kind of a little bit of a deception because they practice so much of hypocrisy. They practice so much of don't be when we go to our friend's house. This is how I remember well my dad telling me and my parents on the way to our friend's house, and before we get there, they say, "No, you behave tonight. You know, make sure you don't do this or don't do that because we did it at home." So you tried to be someone else when you came out with others than rather how you were at home and or in your everyday life. But the reason it's such a deception is because out front it looks calm, it looks peaceful, but amongst themselves, I have never lived in a peaceful Amish community. That may be some strong words, but I've never experienced that in my time. And what happens is there's always, there's no peace there because people are looking down on each other. Because you're all supposed to obey these rules. And a set of rules causes a lot of grief. You know, because maybe Melvin, he can get away with something. Maybe he drives the neighbor's tractor, but if I do it, the bishop will punish me. They have respect of persons. The list just kind of goes on. So behind the scenes, I would say there's so much drama, so much trouble in my experience. That's something I could never understand growing up, why we cannot get along. Even though we come together, we have a great time, you know, maybe like I said earlier, to help each other build a barn or just work together. But most of those times when you were together, you spent your language, your conversations were a lot built around talking about others and then most times down. It wasn't always, but it got
A lot of gossip.
A lot of gossip.
Talk. Yeah.
It got so bad before I got born again. I started seeing light, obviously, and my best friend in the Amish, you know, we would talk anything, but he had such a habit of when they came over to our house for supper, it was all gossip. You know, if it wasn't about running someone else's life down, we had nothing to say. And I remember one Sunday after church, they were at our house and we were talking, and he was sharing this guy and that guy, and it was just so negative. And finally I said, couldn't we switch that stuff? I said, couldn't we just talk about some positive things? Look at the bright side of people's lives and encourage each other in such a way. And we sat there, he had nothing to say, and soon they went home. So that kind of brings out, and I'm not saying everybody is that way, but where I grew up, that's how it was.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Just like he said, it's quite the deception. Outsiders looking in, it looks like a very peaceful way of life, relaxed, but just a lot of peer pressure that goes on. Just peer pressure they put on, for example, even down to the clothing. Like this lady's prayer cap had to look just this way, and the other one could have even a nicer one than my wife had, and my wife got complained about it. Her sister-in-law made the cap, you know, for our daughters, and they would complain about it, but he wouldn't mention a name in the church whose cap it was. And I said, and I even talked to the minister. I said, if that's our cap, I'll gladly put it away. But I don't want to do it if you're not talking about me. Why would I put aside a new prayer cap I just paid for somebody to make? Then again, you know, later on in church they just complain again. And finally my dad said, Melvin, it's you. Well, that's what I asked a month ago.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know. But instead they make announcements in church making it sound like I was disobedient, but they never tell me that really that's what they meant. So those kind of things were discouraging. The other thing is a lot of child abuse, whether it's verbal abuse or whether it's punishment to the point it's abuse, or sexual abuse. And those are a lot of things. People looking out think the Amish are so spiritual. I'm not here to degrade anybody. And maybe somebody listening would think, I disagree with him. I'm sharing my experience, the group of people I came from.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of for me, I was more verbally abused, downgraded, degraded, that sort of thing. I didn't feel loved in my family, that sort of thing. And in other kids, I know other kids that got severe beatings, And then there was other families that didn't. They had a way of getting their children to do what they wanted to do without that kind of stuff. So I'm just sharing my experience. And then going to the sexual part of it, whether it's rape, molest, that in that kind of a line, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on behind the scenes, and people don't realize. But these girls that experience these things, they're literally trapped. Imagine yourself. For one thing, you don't realize how the world looks at it, for number one. Secondly, they got no way of escaping to even get to a phone to report something like that. There's no phone. They don't have a phone. So they're literally trapped and put on a guilt trip. It's a huge guilt trip they get put on if they report something, especially to report something to law. If the law gets involved, you might even get excommunicated from that Amish community just for reporting it to the law.
For bringing the world in?
Yep. So if they want to handle the matters in their own sense of the way of church, whether we'll do excommunication or a confession in church, and then they think life should just go on like before. And there's no help there for the person that was abused, and the abuser, he's free to do it all over again. And it's in today's world, it is a huge problem. And I'm not trying to degrade the Amish, but it is seriously a big problem.